Hi everyone, Stepan here with another game, Caro-Kann again. My opponent's rating is provisional. His blitz rating is 1500. His blitz rating is 1500 and it's not provisional, and his rapid rating is 2300. That's kind of weird, but okay. 1500 blitz, 2300 rapid. George is getting upset. I don't know if you guys like Seinfeld, but I do. Okay. I don't know A3. The idea is if I go C5, he takes and goes B4. Okay. So I'm gonna go knight D7. Yeah, A3 is a strange move. I mean, I get it. He wants to gain a tempo on the bishop. But it's just a normal short Caro-Kann where he is a tempo down. So okay, knight E7. This is what I played last time, except that he hasn't castled and has a pawn on A3. Okay, C4. Now, C4, if I take it, he takes with the bishop, I go bishop G4. That's the usual plan. You want to put pressure on the D4 pawn. So DC4, bishop C4, bishop G4. Eliminate the knight, go knight F5 and put pressure on the pawn. I like that. I'm gonna do that. That's the usual plan. Unless he goes knight H4. Okay. Standard. I'm weakening the D4 pawn. I actually played a tournament game in Italy 2 years ago in this exact setup where my opponent gave up this knight, weakened the pawn on D4. And I can actually now go knight b6, gain a tempo on the bishop, and pick up the pawn on d4. Unless he plays queen d3, there I go knight f5 maybe. Okay, knight b6, queen e2 or queen d3. Queen e2 loses the pawn, so queen d3 is the only move. Knight b6, queen d3, knight f5, bishop e3 is forced. And then if I take the bishop, so okay, knight b6, queen d3, knight f5, bishop e3. I could start knight f5 to prevent him from playing queen d3 against knight b6. So knight f5 first. He goes bishop e3. I go knight b6. Yep, that works. I'm gonna go knight f5. If he goes bishop g5, I take it. Ah, can he go? No, he cannot go. He could go d5, but then knight e5, d5, knight e5, yeah, queen e2 I take, it's fine. Yeah, now he just loses the pawn. Now I go knight b6 and I pick up the pawn. This doesn't work. Unless he can take on e6, knight b6, bishop e6, fe6, no, he cannot. Knight b6 wins the pawn. Yeah, that's the problem with c4. Once you've developed your bishop, your d4 pawn is hanging. So remember this pattern of bishop g4, weakening the defense of d4. This is very common strategy. in the Advance Caro-Kann. Okay. So if I take with the queen, he takes on f5. But then I play queen e5, he plays bishop e4. I go f5. So queen d4, bishop f5, queen e5 check, bishop e4 is forced, f5 attacks the queen, attacks the bishop. If queen h5, then g6. So queen d4, bishop f5, queen e5 check, bishop e4, f5. Seems to work. I mean, not just 2 pawns up. So queen d4, bishop f5, queen e5. If he plays queen e4, I take on f5 with the queen. If he plays bishop e4, I play f5, forking the queen and bishop. He doesn't have any useful checks other than queen h5, against which I can go g6. Yeah, so this works. Am I missing something? I don't think so. Bishop e4 is the only move that saves the piece. I mean, otherwise I'm just 2 pawns up. And then I go f5. Okay, if he's gonna do that, then I take... Oof, do I take on b2? I could take on e4, on f5 with the pawn and then take on b2. So he probably goes queen b4 if I take with the pawn. No, I have a bishop on f8. So I take with the pawn. He does something. Yeah, I'm taking with the pawn. I think his only move is queen d4. If he moves the queen away from the defense of f4, then I play f4 and pick up the bishop. This is a bad opening for white. I'm just winning now. I think queen d4 is the only move. Okay. If I go knight d5 and he castles, I go f4 winning the bishop. So knight d5, knight d5 castles, f4. f4 immediately doesn't seem to work. So knight d5 castles, f4. He doesn't have any checks. He has to move the bishop somewhere, and then I pick up the queen. Yeah, this works. Knight d5. There are no good discoveries. I don't want to jinx myself, but I think 4 hours of tactics a day finally seems to be paying off. I've been working really hard. I mean, on my training account, my tactics rating keeps getting higher, which makes them much harder to do. And my goal is to do 30 problems on leeches correctly a day, so failed attempts don't count. So lately it's been taking more than 4 hours. As your rating goes up, now I'm solving them at about 2700-2800. Sometimes it takes me half an hour to do one, and then I fail, and then I want to cry. But I think I'm missing less. Again, I'm aware that tactics have been the weakest part of my game, so I've been grinding them. Not that during this game were complicated, they were fairly simple. Bishop e4, f5 seemed straightforward. But yeah, to be honest, I don't know what he does here. I would resign as white because castles doesn't work. And if castles doesn't work, then, you know, I don't know what he does. I don't see a move for white. Maybe knight d2. Maybe knight d2. But then I still go f4. He moves the bishop, I exchange the queens and take on b2. Wow! Losing his queen? Or his bishop? What am I missing? f4? What does he do? I don't think he has anything here. I just pick up the queen or the bishop. Okay. Oh, what? Okay. Let's analyze. Okay, so I don't know a3. But there were 200 games with a3. Okay, so if a3, the idea is if c5, he can, I assumed he could take and then go b4. Yes, this has been played 4 times, and I don't want to allow this because it loses a tempo. So knight d7, bishop e2, knight e7, c4 is definitely a bad move because I take, and if he doesn't take with the bishop, then I'm a pawn up. If he does take with the bishop, then this. And as soon as I exchange the knight, the d4 pawn is weak and the bishop can be used as a tempo gain. So I assume dc4 is absolutely correct. h6 is better. No, dc4 is fine. Takes, bishop takes. Wait, the engine doesn't play bishop g4? I don't understand why. This is a very common strategic idea. Oh, knight bd2. I'm a moron. I didn't even consider that he defends the knight, which makes this a waste of tempo. Yeah, knight bd2. And now what do I do? Now I've played bishop g4 for nothing. I probably would have gone for knight b6. Then the bishop moves away. And now what? Can I go knight f5? h3? Yeah, I have to take on f3 now. Okay, fortunately for me he played h3, which makes bishop g4 very good. Yeah, now after knight f5 he h5? Okay, knight b6 is good. The engine says knight d4 is better than queen d4. So I took with the queen because if bishop f5, queen e5, bishop e4, f5, he doesn't have a way to save his queen, to save his bishop, so he defends the bishop somehow. I like queen f4, and then I take on e4, he takes, and I'm 2 pawns up. Now, they aren't the prettiest pawns, but oh, maybe I cannot even defend them. Okay, this is why the engine says it's only -2. Yeah, I'm gonna be 1 pawn up. I would castle here. Sorry. Okay, it's still a pawn up. And I have a lead in development. So if I go something like bishop e7 and he castles, then yeah, I have to be slightly better. Because I have the d5 square for the knight and the f6 square for the bishop. Okay. But the way he played it, yeah, I just go ef5 and castles is better than knight d5. Why? Oh, because he still cannot castle. Wait, he can. If I castle queenside and he castles kingside on f4, he has queen g4. So I don't get this. So f4 doesn't work because of queen g4. And if I go knight d5 now? Knight c3. Okay, I mean knight d5 is okay, I'm completely winning. He cannot castle. I assumed knight d2, yeah, knight d2 is the best move. I would have taken on e3 and castled queenside. I assume fe3 and then castles. And white is just busted. I'm threatening to take on b2. I'm threatening to go bishop c5. So yeah. After f4 this is over. If he moves the bishop, I take the queen. If he doesn't move the bishop, I just take the bishop. Okay, fairly simple game. I kind of made a mistake with bishop g4 because he has knight bd2 there, but it was okay. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye bye.